Holy shit. Hey everyone, I am Negan, and I got some big ass news. Apparently, I am gonna be the main character in a movie. God damn. Lucille here is gonna be in IMAX 3D. Jesus.
Hey, what's up guys? Spencer Rhodes here. So there is this article on TV Guide about the future of the Walking Dead franchise, and it's basically covering the possibility of a Negan spin-off film, like a Negan movie on the big screen. Because there's already been talks from an AMC CEO, it says on here their name is Josh Sapin, but he said that they plan on keeping the Walking Dead franchise going for a very long time, like at least another 10 years, probably another 10, 20 years. So I think that with the things that have happened this whole past year with Carl, Rick, the Telltale games, the action figures, The Walking Dead as a franchise has been a little shaky lately, and there's people that are worried that the franchise is coming to an end. So I think that's a part of the reason why the CEO is telling us that it's not going anywhere, that they have plans for the whole franchise for another 10, 20 years. But I also think they're telling the truth. I think they do have plans for The Walking Dead for another 10, 20 years. I think as a franchise, The Walking Dead will be around for another 10, 20 years. It's still really, really popular. And he compared it to the likes of Star Trek, and with how Star Trek has multiple TV shows, movies, action figures, comics, video games, all sorts of shit. And Star Trek has been around since, what, the 60s? And that original show got canceled after 3 years. So The Walking Dead can do really good. It can still do really well as a franchise. With Rick and Carl dead or not, it can still do really well as a franchise. It's still a brand. You can still get a lot of people to watch it, buy the products, the video games, comics, books, whatever. And they have said that there is also going to be movies planned. So there's a possibility that there are going to be Walking Dead movies. You know, at least one probably. But in this article, Jeffrey Dean Morgan talks about this, and he wants to do it. He wants to do a movie. He says here that he's actually been talking about it for the past 2 years with Scott Gimple. And that, so if he's been talking about a Negan film for the past 2 years with Scott Gimple, and remember, Scott Gimple has a lot of power right now. He's like the head guy right now. Then Jeffrey Dean Morgan has wanted a Negan movie almost since his introduction in the show. I mean, think about it. Negan was introduced a little over 2 years ago. So for most of this time, for most of Jeffrey Dean Morgan's run as Negan on The Walking Dead, he's wanted to do a movie. So he's really interested. But I'm going to read what he says here. He says, "For 2 years, I've talked to Scott Gimple about it." Then he goes on to say, "I certainly hope. I know that they've talked about doing all sorts of other things, movies and whatever else. I don't know too much about it. I know it could be an exciting opportunity to tell that story." And he goes on to say that if they came to him and said, "Hey Jeff, let's do a Here's Negan movie," he'd say, "Oh yeah." So Jeffrey Dean Morgan definitely wants to do the movie. Jeffrey has been all in as far as this franchise goes. He's been consistently just dedicated to being a part of the franchise and playing Negan. He honestly seems like one of the most enthusiastic actors. If you watch his interviews, he's really determined to stick around. Like, he wants to stay. We've had some people like Lauren Cohan and Andrew Lincoln who may or may not be interested in staying on the show anymore. But Jeffrey Dean Morgan, from what I can tell from his interviews, he does seem like someone that wants to stick around. And it makes sense. I mean, it's Negan. It's a very popular character. It's a character that's still alive in the comics. It's a character that, for the most part, has resonated positively with fans, even though he's a villain slash anti-hero slash redeemed villain, whatever you want to call him. But he's a pretty popular character, and Jeffrey wants to be in for the long haul. Now, that could change at any point, but it seems like for the most part, for the last few years, the last couple of years, that Jeffrey does want to stay on The Walking Dead, and that he is interested in a Negan movie. Now, the only reason that I am covering this topic is because Ronnie Hayes just made a video about it on Make a Path Presents, and he linked this article in the video description. So I read the article, checked the article out, and Ronnie Hayes discussed some of his opinions about the ideas for a Negan movie. And I don't want to just repeat all of it, but he said some things like you could adapt the Here's Negan comic, which, in case you don't know, the Here's Negan comic, it's this, I think it's a 12-part, I read it, but it's almost a year old at this point, maybe over a year old, but it's this 12-part mini comic story that goes back in time and tells Negan's backstory. It tells a lot of the story of Negan and some of what Negan's life was before the apocalypse, what happened to his wife dying of cancer, and how he kept meeting people that died and eventually became a leader, and how he found Lucille and the Black Jacket. It's basically Negan's origin story. And yeah, that could absolutely be a movie. That could be part of a movie. There's also the things that have happened in the past, in the story. With the Saviors, with the Sanctuary, with Negan, Dwight, Simon, Sherry, with all these characters, there have been events and things that have happened either off-screen or things that happened in the past that the characters mentioned or talked about. Like Negan mentioning how there used to be a different leader before he took over, and this leader was worse, and that Negan and Simon worked together to take him down. And there's the backstory of how Simon ended up wiping out the entire Oceanside, the entire group of males that were over the age of 10 years old. That's mentioned in the show, but it's not shown. That's something that they could show. They could show Dwight getting his face burned. So there's a lot of ideas with Negan, the Sanctuary, the Saviors, Simon, Dwight, Sherry. There's a lot of things that have been mentioned in the show that were in the past, that happened off screen that could be in the movie. And I absolutely agree with that. I think a Negan movie could work if it's done right. I don't think it's completely necessary, because I believe, as someone who is an aspiring writer, I believe that you don't necessarily have to go back and show everything. I mean, that's something that a lot of people hated about Star Wars and Lord of the Rings, how we had this trilogy at first with this backstory, and then years and years later, because it became so popular, there was a new trilogy that actually shows all the backstory, and some people believe that prequel trilogy for both Star Wars and Lord of the Rings sort of ruined the whole universe as a whole and made things worse and showed things that didn't need to be shown. And I do hope that they avoid that if they do make a Negan film. You know, Scott Gimple, whoever writes it, whoever directs it, I hope that they don't make things worse by showing the audience things that they possibly already know or already know about but haven't seen. Sometimes it's better that way. Sometimes it's better if it's just mentioned. If it's just something in the past, it could be more effective if we don't see it. It could be more effective if it's not shown. I think a part of what makes Dwight's story and his scars so cool is that we don't see it. Even in the comics, we never see Dwight get his face burned. We see Dwight before and we see Dwight after. We don't see the event. And that's a part of what makes it even worse, I think, that we don't see it. I think that you kind of have to be careful. Sometimes you don't need to show every little thing, every little event. If it's already been mentioned, if it's already been talked about by other characters, sometimes that's all you need. Now, there can be things that have not been mentioned. There could be events with Negan, Simon, Dwight, that the characters have not talked about. And that would, I think, that would be something to do for the movie. Not just cover all the things in the past that the characters have mentioned, but we didn't see. Cover some things that are new, that we don't know about, that might add a little bit to Negan's character, Simon's character, Dwight's character. It doesn't all have to be things that we already know about. It could be something new. Something that's definitely, a flashback or in the past, a backstory, but not something that's already been mentioned by characters. I mean, take the Han Solo movie, for example. A lot of people didn't like it because it was unnecessary. It gives more depth to Han Solo's character. It gives more depth to his relationship with Chewbacca, his relationship with Lando. I think when you go back and you watch the prequel trilogy, things connect a little more because you understand how those characters met. But overall, it was unnecessary. And I want the Negan film to avoid that. I don't want a Negan film to be made if it's unnecessary. I want it to be necessary. I don't want a Negan movie that's all about things that we already know about. If there's going to be a Negan movie, I want there to be things that we don't know about. Things involving Negan that we don't know ever happened. Things with his past that we don't know ever happened. Keep in mind, there are some things from the Here's Negan comics that don't necessarily have to happen in the same way. We know that his wife died of cancer. Well, actually, I don't know. I'm not even sure that Negan ever mentioned that. He might have. I don't know if he specifically said it was cancer in the show. We know he had a wife that died and that he felt guilty and that her name was Lucille. We know all that. That's definitely the same in both the show and the comics. But everything from the Here's Negan comics, they don't have to be adapted into the movie. Some things can be changed. I want it to be necessary. I want a Negan film to be necessary and offer the fans something new, something that they don't already know about or that they don't already know is going to happen. Because I think that's how a prequel story should be. With a lot of prequels, if you just show everything that characters mentioned before, I just think that's kind of lame. So I'm hoping that if a Negan movie does get made, that it covers new ground and it tells new stories with Negan in the past, definitely in the past, but something that we don't expect. Because I think that would help it be successful, that would help it get well received by critics and fans of the show, and I think that's just the best possible option. Anyway, guys, that's just my opinion. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you think there should be a Negan movie? Are you excited for that idea? What do you think the movie should be about? Do you think it should cover new ground, or it should just cover everything that the characters in the show talked about happened but we didn't see? Just post away and let me know what your thoughts are. Anyway, with all that said, I am Spencer Rhodes, and I will see you guys later. Bye.